Mr. Arun, love the enthusiasm. I would love for the other panelists to show the enthusiasm as well. If you agree, give me a thumbs up. Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so our very first question goes to Mr. Tony. Mr. Tony, how to secure cloud assets while adhering to regulatory compliance, and how do we improve the security posture of your digital core?
Hi, thanks for the warm welcome to the session. I guess in order to secure, in answering the how, right? Actually, one of the fundamental questions that all organizations need to know is what are you trying to secure before you understood how. The reason being is because how is a very big topic in terms of how you can do certain things, but what is something that one has to understand in terms of the risks and in terms of the impact if that particular assets or digital core, you can call it, is going to be compromised. For example, data. What kind of data do you want to put on the cloud? What kind of security profiles you need to put in terms of controls, etc. Systems, right? In terms of critical systems, there's certain things of what systems you want to put on cloud, how are you going to do it? But in answering that question, one of the fundamentals a lot of organizations also overlook is why are you doing that? Is it for business? Is it for scalability and etc.? Because coming back to my question, how is you can do a lot of things where the industry is providing advisory tools. There's the tons of things that are done. But what you exactly you're achieving and aiming for is the answer to how. Yep.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Tony. What a point to make, right? What over how? So our question to you is, and we'd love for you to share a little more light on how does one decide the what?
So I think how is the people part of it, right? You need to understand how you're going to manage the critical assets. How are you going to manage, create and define user profiles? How are you going to define what kind of administration you want to do? How are you going to automate? Because at the end of the day, the spirit of going to cloud is to have as little as possible people involved in doing stuff, right? So people is one thing, processes is how, right? So how do you automate security detection? So maybe in the yesterdays, we talked about you have people in the room looking at vulnerabilities, right? So in cloud, you have to have automation, you have to have security threshold defined, you have to have tools in place, and you need to have events. Because mind you, when you go into cloud, is the amount of messages you are getting, the amount of things that you're getting is going to be tremendous. Because what cloud gives you and brings to the table is a lot of visibility on how your platform is operating. So having appropriate alerts, having appropriate tools and platforms to manage those alerts and create sensible alerts to the people who are reacting and monitoring those systems is important, because you're looking at the digital core. Today, most of the enterprise are looking at maybe 10, 15, 20% to cloud. But as in times to come, businesses are going to what we call agility mode, right? They're trying to figure out how can I use platform to grow my business. Digital core is going to not just be only data. Digital core is going to be your business. Digital core is also things that you're going to monetize going forward as well. So having aside people, privileges, these things are important. Automation, and making sense of those automation that comes up in terms of the events is important. I think last but not least is the tool sets, right? I think the tools is something that, if I can ask the panel, is something that we don't have to worry. It's just about selecting, work with the right partner, selecting the tools and making the process work for the enterprise.
Excellent answer, Mr. Tony. And from one excellent leader to the others, we have Dr. Erdl. Dr. Erdl, so how do we automate incident response and other security workflows with threat intelligence?
This is a great question. I mean, we all know by now that incident response is going to happen either today or tomorrow. We all know there is two types of organizations. One, they know they've been hacked. Two, they don't. Doesn't matter who you are. You either hitting the news or you're about to get the news. It's like when I'm pretty sure we have kids around us, when they first start to walk, we try to support them. We put them in a special car and they try to walk. We try to automate their walking. So why? Otherwise they will fall down and maybe hurt themselves. What we will do is we will try to protect them than hurting themselves while falling. Example, my daughter, she was trying to walk while she was 9 months old. Then she fall bad and she refused to walk for another 6-7 months. So now let's put this in cybersecurity. With all this news which hits the headlines, big organizations, big budgets, name me a company who was not there yet. Threat hunting is important. Threat intelligence is important. Incident response is important, but it's like putting this all, they have to be all synchronized. Like this panel, we have valuable speakers here. If we all start to speak at the same time, our listeners not going to get the anything out of it. Incident response is the same. If we can set up the process well, if if a company gets the senior management support, the proper testing, the balance, the security, then they can easily prepare. To be able to prepare, they have to identify. Once they identify, then they can do the containment. They can do the automation. Tools are important. Threat intelligence is really important. Another example from non-IT, Chen Shu. I'm pretty sure we all heard about him. He said 2,500 years ago that to win a war, you have to know yourself, but it's not enough. You have to also know the enemy. In other words, he's highlighting threat intelligence. How can you know the enemy if you don't have any intelligence? Again, another example from movies, James Bond. We all know him, right? What was he? He was a threat intelligence officer, or otherwise spy. I'm not saying threat intelligence spying, but threat intelligence is empowering organizations to know about their enemies, to know about what's happening next door, to know about what happened yesterday, to be able to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Back to your tools, automations. I love it. I mean, I work at Komodo. We have some great tools as well, but you cannot just rely on tools. I still believe in threat hunting and SOC, human edition is important. But the other thing is, let's say I'm a SOC analyst. It's 4 a.m. I had a bad day. I had a big fight with my wife. While I was driving to the office, I hit the car and it was my fault. Then my boss was angry to her husband. And then she came and took the anger out of me. So I had a really bad day and it's 3:45 a.m. An alert comes up. What is if I'm a human. What is if I miss this alert? So automation is also important, as well as the importance of human as well. Something can be flagged as false positive, and there we will need the human interaction. So back to your question, I believe both of them still needs to be hand to hand. It's like AI, ML. It's great, but we all watched the Terminator movie, right? Remember the robots, they come back to kill us. They wanted to bring their own environment. So can we just rely on them? Or let's think from the other side of the medallion. While we're using automated tools as defenders, are the hackers gonna sit down and wait? Great example happened early this year when that big sunburst attack happened. I'm not trying not to give any company names, but unfortunately I'm going to be, because it was one of the most sophisticated attack, and one of the victims was one of the world's biggest cybersecurity firm. But it happened through supply chain attack. It happened through trusted network. It happened through a never seen attack before. Doing proper investigations, and the ex-CEO, I really don't know how they make him the CEO. blame the intern to have a password. Unfortunately, he's the company name as Solavins123. And this shows that they were not prepared. This shows they had a great businessman, which bring the organization to the next level, but a bad businessman in the same level because he never thought about falling down. You know, good parents will try to arrange their kids not to fall down. A good driver, a good car will have an airbag. And a good incident response plan will have automation. I hope this answered the question. I try to give many non-IT examples just to make it more relevant, actually, to say that, hey, incident response, cybersecurity is part of the life.
We completely agree, and we absolutely love those examples. I feel like I know your daughter already. Fantastic answer, Dr. Arul. Just on a side note, that has to be the most realistic background, virtual background that I've ever seen, or you've actually read that many books.
Look, this is not a background. This is my room.
Wow! Wow!
You know, my awards, my room. So yes.
The only way I could have those many books behind me is if I had a virtual background of a library, because wow, now you know where all that knowledge comes in from. Dr. Arul, what a point to make, right? You spoke about threat intelligence. So our question to you is, right, all of that can be automated and programmed, right? You
Yes.
need to know of it. Only then can you automate, program it. But how does one automate and program a threat that one doesn't know about?
I mean, it's like incident response is about something that you don't know anyway. I mean, if you know I'm gonna hit you now, what will you do? Let's assume we are next to each other. Of course, I will never hit a woman or a human being, but let's assume I'm just about to hit you. What will you do? You will try to protect yourself, right? Because you know I'm gonna hit you. Saying that, let's say you walk in the street during the day, and will you hold your bag really hard, or you will just walk normally? There are many people around. I'm asking you.
You'll clutch onto your bag, of course.
Same street, it's 9 p.m., nobody's around, and you see the dodgy man, he is looking at you bad. He looks like he's gonna steal your bag. What will you do? You will hold the bag tight, right? And this is exactly what incident response is. You're gonna assume you're never gonna get hit. It's like, you know you're gonna die one day. Correct me if I'm wrong, I hope you do. But we don't know when. You live as you're never gonna die, but I hope you do something good on the fate of, you know, when you die in the other side, or reincarnation, depends on what you believe. Or, you know, we know we're gonna die, but we pretend we're never gonna die, but we try to save money, we try to, you know, incident response is the same thing. Assume you are never gonna get hacked, but prepare as you're gonna get hacked right now. So another example, I'm pretty sure you have some valuable, some ring or some nice watch in your house. Where do you keep it? Right next to the exit door, or in a dark corner, in a very hard to find corner when you're leaving the house? I guess not next to the exit door. Same applies to incident response. If you can prioritize your assets, if you can protect, if you know, if you put defense in depth, if you use the cloud, if you use the tools, if you use the services, it's also like I said, I work for Komodo. We don't provide, for example, services, but we work with partners. It's like another example. Let's say I'm going to give you a free Ferrari. Will you be happy? But you're going to drive the Ferrari in a desert, and you're responsible of the expenses of the car. Probably you will not. I don't want to talk too much because I know we have valuable other guests here, but I will leave it to another session. But I guess you get the point, right? I don't want to steal others' time. Apologies.
Dr. Arul, I have never had a smile on my face when someone tells me, I hope you die one day.
And I didn't say you will die one day, but I hope you know you're going to die one day. I hope you know. So I hope you can hear it first time from me, right? I didn't say I hope you will die one day. No, please watch the recording. Tony, Arun, did I say, please come on?
No, I think
I'm well aware. Fantastic answer, Dr. Arul. And after that fantastic answer, let's move on to our fantastic next leader. We've got Mr. Nair with us. Mr. Nair, what is the status of data privacy legislation in different countries, and where do you see the future of them?
I think he's muted.
I believe so too. Mr. Vasudeva Nair? All right, not a problem. We'd love for Mr. Arun Kumar to take that question.
Sure. Thank you, Nikita. So what I would start by saying is that data regulation is an evolving field. So with the GDPR, it all began maybe 3-4 years ago with Europe introducing GDPR and others starting to follow suit. So this is an evolving field, and I do not think any of us have a complete understanding of what is the state of today and how it will evolve. But what is definitely happening is there are two big trends. One, governments are increasingly concerned about the amount of data being collected on citizens. Two, governments also want to protect critical infrastructure that can be attacked digitally. So if you look at the laws that are being framed, they are either around personal protection or infrastructure protection. In addition to it, you also have different laws that call out for explicit forms of governance. For example, there are US federal laws that clearly say we need an information security organization. There needs to be a designated person responsible for implementation and management of security controls and so forth. So these are, I would say, the broad premises around which legislation around cybersecurity or information security is based. And this will probably be the trend over the next 3 to 4 years. It'll become maybe stronger. It'll also become, I would say, more implemented, because today many legislations are defined, and it is only through litigation people are getting to understand what the implications of not following them are. For example, we all saw the publicized case studies in Europe for Marriott, British Airways, etc. So huge fines were imposed, then they were reduced on appeal. So the answer, or what the thought I would want to leave this group with, is that the legislation is evolving, right? Penalties are being worked out as both regulators as well as organizations figure out what are the right controls. And there is no one expert source of answer. So the idea is to always understand what is relevant locally, connect with local experts. So especially for people who are operating in a multinational context, the idea is to make sure that the central security policy is ready to meet with the most stringent regulation, and it is tailored to meet appropriate local reporting. So that way we have the strongest framework as the baseline, and we have, I would say, tailoring to meet reporting requirements for a specific country.
Yeah. Mr. Arun, I've always been wanting, and I speak on behalf of the audience members as well. Is it naive to think that the government does not have our best interest? And what happens when the government does collect information? Like, what possibly could be the worst case scenario here? That is the government. That is somebody who's governing us.
Right. So again, this is these probably would straddle cybersecurity law and the philosophy of law, right? Because typically you look at, there are cultures that look at government as the entity that protects, and there are cultures that look at government as a force that sort of balances individual freedom versus what is required to be done collectively. So I believe the truth lies somewhere in between, right? I do not think the government should be an all-seeing eye, like what you read in 1984 about George Orwell's Big Brother, or we should keep the government completely blind. So what we should do as responsible corporate citizens is to arrive at what actually is the required level of monitoring. Now that is a not so easy conversation to have, because opinions vary and there are pretty strong opinions all across. So this is a conversation that needs to evolve, but we need to face the truth. We need to face the truth that the moment we log on to a computer, we have a digital footprint that is out there to be monitored, right? Now, how do we manage it? Who do we allow to access it? Who do we allow to make use of it? Is the question around which litigation has been evolved.
Fantastic
Right.
answer, Arun. Mr. Nair?
Yeah,
Mr.
am I
Nair,
audible now? Hope I'm
yes,
audible.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
you are.
Yeah, sorry for say, a little bit glitch, right? So I just want to add one point,
Please do.
on whatever Arun has said. So the thing is that to understand how governments are taking it, right? So there are 66% of coverage, in terms of global countries are concerned, right? 194 out of 194 countries, 128 countries has already passed some sort of law, right? So, and also, the 10% of countries are actually following this, right? They have some sort of draft regulation ready. And as Arun indicated that, this is going to happen in next, 3 or 4 years, right? And it's a journey that everybody has to travel, you know. And one concern is like certain countries are creating the laws particularly to monitor citizens, right? So that is one concern that among the global community, right? So that's it, right here. Thank you.
Fantastically put, Mr. Nair. We'd love for you to, brief us a little further. And then I would pose the same question again. What is the status of data privacy legislation in different countries? And what do you think? What does Mr. Nair think of the future ahead?
I can tell you in context of India, right? So we already have certain regulation passed, and certain regulations are in front of the parliament, right? So that would be passed in some sessions next, right? So that is the future of India. Now, when it comes to global regulations, as Arun has indicated that the main thing when it comes to regulation, the main point which is coming into our mind is GDPR, right? So yeah, so GDPR and followed by GDPR, there are many countries who have already passed, right? And there are good examples being set, to follow, and the countries are following that. That's a good thing to know.
That's a good point, Mr. Vasudevan. So you spoke with respect to India, of course, and I'd love for the other panelists, because this is an international session. We'd love for Mr. Tony to pitch in as well. Mr. Tony, what is your perspective? What is your country's perspective on the same?
Yeah, I think talking on behalf of what I understood in the Singapore landscape, right? So as part of the pandemic evolution, more companies are getting online. And so I think what the government is trying to do is to establish two things, right? One is to establish accountability, like to Arun's point, they're legislating in terms of reporting. That means in the event that you get compromised, you have to report. Versus previously, you could actually do a side skirt and just maybe present it privately that you're mitigating it. I think this is one thing that has been evolving today. I think the reason of getting companies to report this kind of compromises or kind of news into the public is, I think, to keep the public aware what they're getting into. First thing first, right? What are they sharing? To be kind of, because digital is something that is going to happen. You're going to live more and more in the digital room versus the physical room, right? So today, even a simple hairdo that you visit a shop today, you're checking in with all the tokens. You are kind of checking in a form with the hairdressers themselves, because they also need to understand who's visiting at what time. So having that news regular in the public domain actually gets everybody stood up and say, oh, I'm doing the same thing but at a smaller scale. But what is the outcome of that impact is something that drives to people, right? The outcome is very simple. If you have a data breach, the outcome is you have reputation risk, and your reputation goes down the drain. No matter how good your service is, nobody will come, right? So I think the Singapore government is doing two prongs. One is encouraging this reporting. I mean, as part of the punishment, yes, they might report a certain amount that they got fined. Eventually, we don't know how much. But I think the other thing is also using those signboard or those kind of alerting stuff, right? To get everybody aware. It's not just the company's problem. It's not just the organization problem. It's everybody's individual. Everybody has to be aware. Individually has to aware what are you sharing. So sometimes it's also it's also your responsibility to ask, why are
Mr.
you
Tony,
collecting
again,
this?
which country is it that you're referring to? Which
Singapore,
country?
sorry, Singapore.
Oh, Singapore. Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And
Yeah.
this is similar in Europe, GDPR. You know how much the fine is? They charge you 4% of your revenue. A great example, British Airlines. They had a very small incident out of 1,000 people for their frequent flyer program. The fine was more than $200 million. Or come on, this is still good. In US, the US Securities and Exchange Commission. Now they make it very clear that you can get jailed as an executive for money. Okay, the company will pay. Who cares? British Airlines big enough. But hold on, I'm gonna do a mistake, and I'm gonna be in jail. The company is not gonna be able to pay you. Plus, you're gonna lose your job. So the accountability is getting higher and higher. And I believe, like GDPR, when they first started, Singapore is usually really great when it comes to rules and regulations. I'm pretty sure this jail rule from US Security and Exchange Commission is going to replicate soon everywhere else. And it makes sense because look, I do everything what I can to protect my data. Why is company X not doing it? Or why are they not telling me what are they taking of me? Facebook, for example, you all know you do it willingly. At least you know you're doing it willingly. When first Facebook started, everybody was saying, "Hey, this is my Facebook page," and you can go watch my my YouTube channel. In 2012, 2011, I was talking, "Hey, it's not your Facebook; it's Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook." But now, a bank has all the details of mine. They get hacked, or eBay. Remember when they get hacked, or Apple, the iCloud incidents where the pictures leaked. They make money from hardware. They're charging me legs and arm. Then they collect data. You can only, Apple is one of the best when it comes to privacy these days. But even though they do still collect data and they give an advertisement back. So when they sell me a phone, they charge me money for an extra charger. Samsung did the same thing. But hold on, when you leaking my data, why are you not getting fined? I am with those laws. Saying that, currently I work in a cybersecurity firm and I'm willing to pay the same thing as long as I do my best. And if I don't do my best, I should pay the fine. If it's jail, I should go to jail because your life, sometimes your life is in my hand. Let's say Tony, he has diabetes and he's using a wireless diabetes injection, which automatically gives him insulin. If I found this out and remotely hack his medical device, and instead of giving 2 milligrams, I made the numbers up, 20 milligrams of penicillin, he most probably will die. So his life is depending on this device, but they don't want to invest on security and they don't want to be liable of it. Sorry, this is past, in my opinion.
Yes, agree. I think in Singapore we have a board that's set up, a body that's set up to really push this kind of awareness, like PDPC, we have PDPA. Really, I mean, there are two things, right? So it's also to help improve individual lifestyle because it's also to protect your data from leaking, to not get spam call, because it's a closed system, right? So first, like doctor says, yes, if you have a device that is actually exposed and someone knows about it, they can actually kill you remotely, right? And you will die. But the thing is,
oh my God,
I genuinely appreciate Dr. Erdon's obsession with death. Second answer consecutively. Fantastic, Doctor. Doctor, which country is it that you're talking of?
I'm in Australia at the moment. Australia has similar rules as well, but honestly, they're coming from behind. Yes, they have now a cybersecurity strategy. Last 7 years, as most of you know, I used to live in Dubai. I just moved back to Australia. Now I'm based in Australia, but my job is in a US company, Komodo. Even though I'm, doing some board member jobs all across the globe. Australia is catching up with regulations, but the high regulations that I was talking about was, of course, US. GDPR was Europe. And as Tony said, I know Singapore very well as well. They are strict. And I bet soon India or any other country is going to jump in because it's like remember, like if you ever worked in financial institution, central banks, they didn't know what to do. Then they found out that, hey, many banks are not following the rules. Let's find them. It became a nice cash revenue for the banks, for the central banks, and which I don't mind because, banks, when it comes to charging us, I used to work for a bank, don't tell this, they're good. But when it comes to giving back, they're not the best. So why not having someone forcing them to protect my data? I honestly, I love it. In banking industry, and way before I used to work for the bank, I used to be, consulting for many other banks while I was at Microsoft. They used to, oh, regulator, I hate it. No, as long as the regulator is fair, it's like police. Oh, you know what? They charge me because I was going 70. Yeah, what was the street zone? 50. I'm like, okay, you deserve to get charged. The police is not charging you to charge you. He's just trying to save your life or others' life. But in a 50 zone, if they charge you, if you go 51 and they charge you, yeah, that's something different. For 1 mile, I can't argue, But for 20 mile, I cannot argue. Same applies for regulations. Things gonna happen as long as you do your best to protect it. And that's why cyber insurance might come in. But again, this is another topic. I don't want to steal too much time again.
Dr. Odal, fantastic answer. And you mentioned about, these companies charging you an arm and leg. In India, we have a saying, if you want to buy an Apple phone, you have to sell your kidney.
Which one, the right or left one? Just joking. And don't forget, then you have to sell something else because now you have to buy also the charger.
Oh, yes.
That's extra money. Kidney and the earring.
Fantastic. Mr. Arun, over to you. Which country is it that you would want to be representing and what is your take on it?
See, I'm based out of India, but the role that I do is global. See, one thing I would like to indicate here is that all these laws and fines that we read about in the papers, they are again the initial fines that that get levied. For example, both in the Marriott case and the British Airways case, the fines were later reduced on appeal. So one thing that we need to bear in mind is that it is evolving, right? There is no final word on it that is cast in stone that we can all follow. Right. So everyone is figuring it out. And as both Tony and Dr. Erdal clearly pointed out, it is the responsibility of individuals, companies, and the government to find the right balance so that, cyber or IT systems cannot be misused and cause, financial harm or personal harm. So I think that is the spirit with which we should look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Arun. Gentlemen, for the next two questions, we would actually take in two perspectives on the same question. So the question is now posed to Mr. Tony and Dr. Erdal. We'll start off with Mr. Tony. Mr. Tony, how do you see the security team's goals contributing to the overall business goals?
I think the security team is by far one of the most important team. In my earlier discussion, I talked about reputation. So the security team are the they are the border who's looking at the defense, right? In terms of not to allow anyone or any adversary to enter the organization. So at the same time, the security team are the guys who are on the floor, right? Patrolling all the different systems that's running to make sure that all the systems are, in the sense that if you look at it, the folks are patrolling the cams and all, making sure that all the doors are locked properly at the system level. So I guess what happens is now with digital and with the moment something happens, it's not just within a region, everybody knows about it globally, right? So I guess the security team now has a responsibility to make sure that the company that they're working for or helping to protect has a certain reputation, has a certain security posture maintained, and making sure that the image is actually user-friendly or consumer-friendly, because consumer today, in terms of consumer-friendly, it's not just about, oh, how good your product is, right? How safe when I feel when I'm using your product. I think that's where I think the security team is now becoming the limelight of the team, of the organization today, who is actually helping every one of us day and night, making sure that all the lights are up. But one thing, making sure you and I are safe in terms of further down the road, we will get something, because you get data leak and you get something else, right? It's not 1+1, it's 1+ many, all the scams are coming, right? That's where things are happening today. Yep.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Tony. Dr. Erdl, over to you.
I totally agree. And let's give outside example again. Who is the strongest country in the world? You know, US, Russia. What makes them strong? Their army, their technology. You know, I know the issues, for example, between India and Pakistan. They're both equally strong. Some of them are having more technology, others have more weapons. You know, I don't want to go to the political issues, but what makes you safe in a city? Police. What makes the building safe? Security guard. What makes technology safe? Us, security team. It's same, you know, the stronger your army is, like why Cuba, for example, little country, cannot just go attack US or Russia, you know, they're big. Why they're not just going attacking, or they're not attacking China? Because they're equally strong. Same applies to cybersecurity. You have to have great security team, but this should be backed up with management. Again, CISO's role is cybersecurity, Chief Information Security Officer, but the CISO needs to be empowered by the board. If not, it's like you, for example, you want to make this event really good, but your manager says, us have 500 people in the panel and they're gonna only take 30 seconds. What is that thing he's gonna learn out of it? Nothing. So the discussion will be only more valuable the more we can contribute. Back to security teams. Security teams, I mean, it's important, and it's the CISO's role, empower CISO's role, to create a security culture. The security team is not just the cybersecurity team. Security team main job is to create a culture that everybody contributes in cybersecurity.
Yep.
Example, SolarWinds 123. It was an intern, and the CEO blames the intern. Honestly, I would arrest this guy. I was so pissed off. I'm still pissed off. Like, this guy makes hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's blaming an intern. Like, I don't want to say some bad words, but beep, 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 CEO. How did you become a CEO? To blame an intern? But a good CISO what will do is they will get everybody's contributions, from the cleaner to the contractor, from the contractor to the partner, from the partner to the vendor, from the vendor to the sales manager and cybersecurity manager and IT manager. If everybody contributes into it, it will be better. It's like a country. Yes, a good army is good, good police is good, but you know, like in the airport, and that's Singapore, for example, is one of the best. It's very clear. Like, some people say, oh, Singapore rules are very harsh. If you do something, they arrest you. If you split in the street, they make you clean the street. Hey, that's the best that I can think about. So you make the street dirty, if you're not a tourist, then you have to clean it, and you have to do it for a week. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. This is a great contribution. So everybody contributes to make the street. That's why Singapore, if your ice cream falls down, honestly, 90% if it's not raining, and it always rains, you can just continue eating the ice cream. You know, adding some joke, of course, into it. This is what I mean. If we can make a country like Singapore, like everybody contributes to security. If they see something, like in the airport, if you see something, say something. If you see something suspicious, call. All right, I don't want you to go and kill the virus, but let the CISO, let the security team know. As a CISO, have an open door policy where people can tell you. And this creates a great cybersecurity culture, because not just the product, but not just the team, but the culture is going to help to minimize and mitigate the issues.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to this CISO point, right? Because if increasingly you see CISO is no longer a technology function. If you see a lot of bigger organization, what happens is now CISO sits in the board of directors, the chair, where they actually go into discussion in terms of strategic initiative for the company. So if that's the case, right? So CISO is always there first to monitor, or to kind of be the veto for the initiative, to say that there's certain initiative you can't go, like data privacy. If it hits any of this threshold, I'm going to veto it out, right? Yeah. The other thing of it is, with that power, CISO is now able to also include initiative that is related to security and made it an all business initiative, right? So hence, he is also the one, to be honest, he's the one who is actually training and sharing and create awareness within the boardroom to say that, look, although we are doing a business here, there's certain aspect of security that impacts business.
Fantastic answer.
I
Mr.
just like to
Doshi.
add one point to it,
Please.
especially with respect to looking at security's contribution to business goals. I think we should look at it like how we look at brakes in a car. Now, what are the brakes used for? Do they enable you to go faster or do they slow you down? Right? So I would say the brakes are there so that you can accelerate as much as you want, knowing fully well the brake is there to help you when it is required. Right.
Yep.
So I think that is the function of security. The idea is to make the business run as fast.
The brake in a Tata car, all right, and the brake in Mercedes-Benz, both of them called brake, but do they function the same? Yes, they do. I'm talking about emergency brake. You know what I mean? Brake, I totally agree with you, but it's also important. By the way, Tata has great cars like Range Rovers. Let's give the credit, okay? But I'm just talking about the low-end cars. So when you use
it also
brake,
depends on the.
I love it. But we have to be also highlighting the fine details because the devil is sitting there.
Yes.
Of course, Dr. Edal, but also we should understand what is at stake here, right? So if you can go at 40 kilometers per hour on an Indian road, yeah, that brake would suffice. But if you want at,
I know the traffic very well.
Yeah. So for that, those brakes are enough. And if you're going at 350 kilometers per hour on an autobahn, of course you need very strong brakes. So the whole problem here is there is something called excessive security, and that is what increasingly business starts to talk about, at least on the ground. And that's exactly why we use this analogy to explain to people that we are here to make you go faster within limits.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Tony, Dr. Erdal, and Mr. Arun. We'll head to our last question for the session. Our last question is directed to Mr. Nair and Mr. Arun. So this is a very interesting question to ask, right? How would you explain the value of penetration testing to someone in your finance department? We'll start off with Mr. Nair.
Yeah, interesting question actually. No. See, finance typically understand, the financial terms. If you actually put it in value terms, they understand it better. So to start from, you can actually, say that what is the value of assets, that is at stake. So that's the number one thing that they also would be having, right? And then what is your investment to protect that particular value? So as Arun said, the proportionate. So our security, extreme security or over security is also a problem. So we have to have a balance, right? And finance typically, any CFO is looking for this kind of balance, right? What is the asset that I'm protecting, and what is the amount of investment which is required to protect, right? In those regard, if you can map it, right, and what are the measures and the investment required to protect those kind of assets, then that it would be very simple for them to understand, right? Rather than giving all the technical jargon for a pen test and all, so they won't understand that. Yeah, that's my take.
Fantastic answer.
I think that's a great answer.
In a way that they do. Mr. Arun, over to you.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Mr. Vasudev. So a couple of things to add, right? I think one thing that we all touched upon during our discussion earlier is that it should always start with the tone at the top. So there should be commitment from the senior most financial person, which is the CFO, that pen test is an activity that unlocks value. Right. And in terms of the arguments that you need to frame for it, right now, as you rightly said, Mr. Vasudev, finance people go for the numbers. So we start with what is the cost of a security incident or a data breach? Now, it depends on what report you read. If you read the IBM one, it'll say around 1.4 million USD versus if you read the Sophos one, it'll say close to 2 to 2.5 million USD. But irrespective of that, there is a $1 million cost associated with it in case that particular vulnerability is exploited. So the idea is for us to find out these vulnerabilities ourselves, rather than allow somebody else to find out. So that is one argument we can put forward to a finance team. The second argument is we can always say there is compliance requirement. Say, for example, as an organization, if you're dealing with credit cards, you are obviously required to comply with PCI DSS. If you're under SOX scope, then you will obviously be required to comply with appropriate regulations. So there is always a compliance angle also to it, which we can bring in. And of course, there is an inherent benefit of us finding things out ourselves before somebody exploits it and creates an incident. So there is an element of what financial people like to talk about as avoidance. So is it better to avoid an incident, or is it better to face the cost of an incident after it occurs?
Can I just add one thing? Regardless if it's
Very,
a
very
1
good.
million, 100 million, or even 1 million, it's lots of money. I mean, $1 million, if we all work together, how long is it going to take us to save that much money?
Fantastic.
That's all I want to add.
Dr. Hurdle, thank you so much. Mr. Arun, fantastic answer. Gentlemen, with this, we've come to the end of this segment. What a session it was. Absolutely informative. A big round of applause. And we would, of course, request you to kindly clap for yourselves along with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Fantastic session. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye.